Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome back to another episode of Found Footage Fridays with my co-host, Tom Raymer.
Happy Friday, everybody.
We made it.
We made it to another.
So I'm really excited about this one. It's not dinosaurs. Don't worry, everybody watching.
It's not aliens.
It's not aliens
Mm-hmm.
or dinosaurs. We do have a subgenre for this one, though, or two. It falls into two subgenres.
Oh, what subgenres do you put this in?
I would put this in religion.
Religion, okay.
And people.
Well,
right?
Does cult? Do we have a cult found footage?
Is that like a separate thing? That could be like a sub genre of religion.
Or people. Wait, or people.
Or people. That's valid. Yeah. So the found footage movie Tom and I are talking about today is the 2013 Ty West film, The Sacrament. I love when we do it at the same time. It doesn't happen often, but it's so exciting when it does. So I'm just going to read a short synopsis really quick. So found footage reveals the events surrounding an investigative team's visit to a remote commune led by a dangerous fanatic who maintains an iron grip on his followers. Yeah. And so I had seen this before. This was a first watch for you.
Yep.
So what were your initial thoughts?
Definitely a much bigger budget found footage movie than the vast majority we watch.
Yes.
You know, just look at director Ty West and producer
Eli Roth.
You know, some of the actors were recognizable. The cinematography, it didn't, if I could nitpick, didn't have that feel of the grainy, you know, found footage type film. Even though I think this can be classified as found footage, it didn't have that sort of real footage feel. But it was very well done, incredibly well done.
Yes.
Really hard to watch. Maybe there's only maybe one other movie we've watched that even comes close to this sort of like the heaviness of this. This is probably the toughest movie we've watched.
It's very tough. I think for maybe just general sake, we'll probably not mention exactly what this is actually about until we reach spoilers, just in case, you know, because when I watched this on a first watch, I didn't know what this was an actual story of. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And that changed my viewing, like the way that I viewed it when I was watching it.
See, because you previewed it for me, so I knew what this was about.
You did, yeah.
Going. Now,
do you think that ruined it?
No, not at all. No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so. But I do think it's borderline found footage. I will say that.
Okay.
It is found footage.
Well, it's not. I don't know what this would be called. It's not quite mockumentary, but it's like a TMZ.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, because it's a company called Vice, or a journalist. They call themselves journalists, but they're like entertainment journalists, right? Or whatever you want to call that. From this like big company that does like controversial stuff. And so that, for me, that was my mind's justification for how well the film was put together as found footage, because they had the budget to spend the money and to edit and to make it more, you know?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's not mockumentary exactly. It's more of like,
because they don't show you like even though we see people being interviewed. You don't get like the interviews like you would
No,
in
not
one
like in like Lake Mungo or
no.
Savage Land or Horror in the High Desert.
But it does fit the genre. I'm not saying it
Yeah.
doesn't.
At
It's
least the style. You could at least say it was the
definitely the style. Yeah.
style
Yeah.
of found footage.
So,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a lot. This is not light viewing. This isn't like, something we often joke a lot of these movies that we put on to like fall asleep. This would not be that.
Yeah.
I would
No, I
not.
totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you? I mean, you want me to go first because you went first the last time.
Yeah. Yeah. You go first.
So this is really really great. You know, it's scary, but not in a scary sort of, not how I would typically use the word scary. It's scary in a different way.
Yep.
It's scary because I think sort of hits home, sort of where we are and a lot of things in the world right now. And so scary, I would say, in those ways more than like a
Spooky, scary, like
Grave Encounters or,
sure.
Hell House, LLC, sort of scary, not really, or even Blair Witch, not in that universe. More like a real life scary, which is still scary.
Yeah.
I, because of some of my, borderline, is it found footage things, I didn't rate it like as high as some of the highest movies we've seen, even if it is sort of production wise
Mm-hmm.
and story wise incredibly strong. Um, in the found footage universe, it didn't check all of my personal boxes.
Okay.
That said, I'm gonna rate it. I am going to rate this movie. This is tough. I'm 7.5.
Okay.
7.5.
That's really nervous. I thought you were going to be like 5.
No, 7.5. It's really good. It's
It
really
is
good.
really good. Yeah. 7.5. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I love this film. We've discussed it off and on before, and I think we just
Yeah.
finally decided this time to commit and watch it and talk about it. Um, I am, as I've mentioned before, anything touching on religious themes
Yeah.
will always get higher marks for me. I am also super fascinated with cult mentalities and cult mindsets and like
Mm-hmm.
because those are very real things
Yeah.
that stuff obviously very much happens in real life. And I think, that is why this is so unsettling and so hard to watch, which for even more reasons we'll go into when we get to spoilers. Um, I really loved this. I think that there are so many layers of humanity in this,
Mm.
from wanting to do the right thing to, not doing the right thing, to the layers that break down as we learn more about the people that are there and why they're there and that sort of thing. So many layers of humanity. This is like I watched this years ago and I knew what was I know what it's about. I know what's going to happen. And I got there's a certain spot in the movie that shifts the entire direction. And if you know it, if you know what's coming. And it's like, but for some, like, even all of that being said, it still was hard to watch. It was hard to get through it, even though I do love this film, or I have a lot of respect for it. I really, really love it. So my rating for The Sacrament, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Not surprised. I
Yeah.
saw
Yeah.
that
Well, you
coming.
already knew going into it that I was a big fan of this one
Yeah.
anyway. And
Yeah.
as people who are followers of the show, hey, Ron,
Okay.
it's like, we have very different buckets to fill in found footage because I
Yeah.
am a lot more lenient on that than you are
Yeah.
typically.
Yeah.
And I think I was able to excuse a lot of the stuff that would make it fall on the side of not being typical found footage. Just rationalizing through things on my own, like, but yeah. So,
It's interesting. We talk a lot about how, one found footage movie feels really real, or this actor in this movie feels, you know, believable. Like I really thought that, uh, you know, even still, and that's really important for in found footage for me. I
yeah.
still like all horror movies, like a lot of film, a lot of books I read. I like it to take me out of real, and even though the whole idea of found footage is that these are supposed to sort of feel like real footage.
Yeah.
I still like to sort of be pulled out of reality and it's
I get
fantasy,
that.
and you know uh I think sometimes I don't enjoy as much movies that are uh,
Too real.
too real.
I get that.
And I feel like this has probably come up before, although I did rate Savage Land really high,
Piece of
which
art. I love that movie.
similar sort of could have, yeah. So
Yeah.
but I think maybe that's it. It's not as, even though it's just an amazing movie, um, gut wrenching. The acting is terrific. The writing is terrific. Everything is amazing about it.
Yeah.
But just like my personal preferences for like a movie I want to sit down and watch,
Yeah.
on a Friday night with all the lights off, it's not probably, if I'm, putting it in that
Yeah.
box, I wouldn't rate it as high. But
Yeah.
that's why I rated it a 7.5 and not probably the 10 that it's deserving.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, I mean, I definitely think this is one. I mean, it's kind of like, and I know for reasons that you and I know because we've seen it. It's not quite the same as this, but it kind of makes me feel like how I felt when I watched the Poughkeepsie tapes.
Yes, and I think I reacted that way. Like I was very uncomfortable with that movie.
That movie was,
You were
and
too.
it's so weird. And I guess this really only mostly happens in horror, but like it's so weird to talk about how awful and disturbing something is, but how great of a film it was. It's like such a weird thing to say, but that's because it's like there's more to it than just that, I guess. But the
Sure.
Poughkeepsie tapes was unsettling on a level that going into it, I was not prepared for. And
Right.
so, and with this one, I can't remember because it's been years since I'd seen it originally. I don't remember if that was where I was. I think I was more just impressed with the storytelling method and the way that it was going. And then
Yeah.
I also, at that time that I saw this, I also was not a mother. So that played into a second watch as far as discomfort and that kind of thing. So it's just very
You,
different now.
you know what it? The other thing about this movie is it's not. It's it is a. I'm not sure if it is. There's a lot that's horrible in this movie. Would I
Yeah.
define it as a horror movie? I don't know. I think maybe that's where I am. Is this feels to me more of like, um I don't know. There's terrible stuff in this, like truly terrible things,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if it fits in the horror genre, which I typically feel like that. And this is just me. I'm not saying this is accurate. I feel like found footage is a subgenre of horror.
Sure.
So, whereas this is in the style of found footage, maybe in more of a drama category, or definitely, in my opinion.
I mean, I think for me, I can easily categorize it as horror because if this concept isn't horror, then that's going to cut out a lot of things like slashers. And because those are horrible events that happen to real people, even though I mean Ghostface isn't real, but there's
Mm.
it's just this system, like to me, it's like what makes those things horror is the horrible things that happen. Like because it is
Yeah.
related to like um people, bad things happening to people at the hands of someone else because while cult leaders are not always technically serial killers. They like are, right? Like they don't necessarily like, you know, the old argument that like Manson isn't a serial killer because he didn't technically kill anybody or whatever, right? But come on, like it's like one of those things where it's like, no, maybe not. But he did the things that he did and manipulated the people that he did. And it's not that they shouldn't be held accountable, because they should, but it all streams from this one person controlling and puppeteering all of these horrible things to all these other people. And that is what categorizes it to me, for me, as horror. It just reminds me of like the reasons that slashers are horror. Is kind of.
Oh, see, and I see this is in a like to me, slashers are like firmly in the horror genre. They are center of the horror universe. Whereas, like, there are a lot of movies out there, and particularly like historical dramas, where there's a really bad person in the movie doing really terrible things, but I'm not sure that's enough to make it horror. But it's borderline, and I'm not saying it's not. I'm just, I think that's where my sort of uncertainty on how I feel about this movie lies.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're really dancing around what this movie's about.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to
spoil
it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so let's do it. So The Sacrament is a found footage retelling of the Jamestown mass suicide. Jim Jones is a cult leader. And I'm not caught up on all of my current events as far as cults go, but for quite a long time, and until at least very recently, I believe, was still the largest mass suicide to date. This is where the phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid comes from, because they put cyanide in the Kool-Aid, and that's where like all the people died.
This isn't supposed to be. This is a fictionalized version of that. This isn't supposed to be the same story. Because this is like more modern. This is supposed to happen like 5 years ago.
So they changed the guy's name.
Right.
The motivation for our main characters to go, like, I don't know about anything like that, but the scenes with like people trying to leave and being killed by guns, that very much happened. Like, there were a few survivors in the real scenario. There were people, because I've watched those interviews, and like I know a lot about this one. So but they changed some of it, but a lot of those people, their background stories were backgrounds of people who survived. So like the I forget her name, the like really young girl that had the history of like being an artist, and she's like, oh, I used to live in Australia, and like those background stories were pulled from stories from survivors, people who survived. Other than that, I mean, it takes some what do you call it? Some I forget the phrase. It takes some liberties.
Okay.
But it down to the sunglasses, the way he talks, that's 1,000% like Jim Jones. Which is ironic, because the guy that plays him in the movie, his name is Gene Jones.
I saw that. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what this film is about. It is a retelling of the Jamestown mass suicide.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is why it's so difficult to watch, because it really happened. And for me, I've watched the really emotional interviews with the people who survived, where they talk about their families and like all these things, and people who lost their children because their spouse went along with it and they tried to leave, and things. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but it's a very emotional watch. And then at the heart of it, you've got this little girl that they want to try to save. And so like, this was what I was immediately thinking of when I was talking about like the layers of humanity. You've got these like people coming in to make money. They're like, oh, we're going to spin this story, and we're going to be, it's going to be successful for us we need to help. Like, this is awful. What can we do? How do we do this? And like, he focuses, one of the main guys focuses on that little girl and like wanting to help her, because he's about to be a father, and there's that whole like thing. But the performances in this are so unsettling. When I got to the part as a rewatch where they sit down on that stage with the big cross in the middle and they're talking to him, that part was so like intense. I don't know how to explain
Yeah.
how it made me feel, but that part was that's when you start really getting uncomfortable, I feel like.
And I mean, the whole movie is really uncomfortable, but yes, that
Yeah, sure.
from that point on, especially,
Yes.
I mean, the last 20 minutes or so of the movie,
Is
they're
the hardest.
really, really hard to watch.
It
Um,
is.
but yeah, so I felt um, the acting was amazing.
Yeah.
The writing for the characters, the story itself was very well done. Particularly the actor who played this villain, just uh, horrible. Like, I mean, the actor was great. The character was horrible, and just the purest evil. Um,
Yeah. Under the mask of religion and
yeah,
righteousness and freedom and yeah.
but obviously, it's so much worse knowing that people like this
In
have
real life.
existed, do exist, can exist. Um, so that was really, I think, again, part of what makes this movie so much of a difficult watch.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because, like, not funny, but I remember going into this on my first watch not knowing that it was about Jamestown, and, Jonestown? I keep saying Jamestown, it's Jonestown, I'm sorry. Jim Jones, Jonestown. No one come for me in the
But
comments, I'm sorry.
this, to be clear, this person, his name isn't Jim
Right,
Jones,
his name is something else, I
and
can't
it's
remember.
not Jonestown. It's something Eden, right?
Yeah, Eden's Parish.
Eden's Parish. Yeah.
Yeah. But when they like when I went into watching this, I didn't know that that was the connection that was going to be made later in the film. And so when, they get there, I'm like, "Oh, I wonder where this is going to go." And I'm thinking like, is it going to go demon? Is it going to go like I didn't know. And then I remember when we meet him for the first time and I saw the glasses and I was like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
immediate goosebumps. I was like, "Oh no." Like it was like I can't explain how it made me feel. Like no, because I knew who he was supposed to be, or at least where they pulled inspiration from, however you want to frame that. But yeah, I mean it's written and directed by Ty West. It's produced by Eli Roth, who I mean I love Eli Roth, but I think yeah, it definitely is what I would consider an effectively unsettling film.
I would say one of the most unsettling moments of many in this movie is when they come out of this gathering in the evening and they're standing off sort of behind the big pavilion, and a little girl walks up and hands her that note, and it just says like, "Please help us" or something like that on it.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like that was very effective,
Yeah.
that part in the movie. Um, I
Yeah.
will say, so just looking at this from a pure found footage, analyzing this movie from a found footage perspective,
Yeah.
they gave a lot of reason why they were filming.
Yep.
Obviously, they would keep rolling because they wanted to have this footage, potentially even, to bring back and show the rest of the world. Makes sense.
Mhm.
Where I sort of questioned why they were still filming was when none of the filmmakers were around and all of the characters are drinking this poison, and somebody is still filming all of it, presumably from the cult or something. I didn't know why were they filming that. Who
Yeah.
was filming that? Uh, so that was a nitpicky thing. There was another really cool shot I want to say before I forget it, where I want to say it's when the filmmakers are captured. There's a point where they are captured, and um, the camera falls. You don't see what happens to them, which is good because that's important later on. You don't know if they are alive or whatnot. The
Yeah.
camera falls on the ground, and there's just this great shot of the father, whatever his name is, sort of walking towards the camera, and that was sort of brilliant cinematography, I thought.
Yeah, because he's with the sister, right? She's walking
Yep.
behind. And so, because they don't really explain they don't really set it up with a lot of logic as far as the continuation of filming. All he tells her is, I want them to see this. But it's
Maybe, okay,
weird
yeah, that
because
could be it.
but there's not really there's not really an explanation for that in a deeper level, because then it's like, who?
Right.
And
And then,
what was the point of them seeing it? Like, is it like a revenge thing? Like, because like, you know what I mean? Like, there's not really like a goal or a, you know what I mean?
there's that, and there also, but even with the filmmakers, there are moments where you're like, I get it. They want to bring all this footage back, but they are dedicated filmmakers, if that's the case,
Yeah. And
because there's a
yeah,
lot of stuff happening around them, and they are holding on to those cameras and going back into the woods and getting the camera, and someone's on fire and they're still rolling, and like I just feel at some point, you drop the camera and you run onto the helicopter. But again, dedicated filmmakers, I get it.
which is really interesting when you think about it, because there are definitely moments where they make a point to justify turning the cameras off
Of
too.
course,
So it's
yep,
like a weird balance of like, because like when they first get there, he's like, hey, just in case anything happens, switch out what you've got. So we still have the stuff from the beginning. So there was like a
yeah,
conscious effort
yeah,
to make a statement about why they weren't filming, but then there were just some over filming or
over the
whatever.
filming, yep, yep.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't know. Like one of
Well,
the reasons I think it's so good is because it is so well done. Like as far as the acting and the cinematography, like you said, and it's yeah.
yeah, and again, even at the end,
Mhm.
the, the father is, I guess he has a camera in there and he's filming himself, I think, with the main filmmaker, which is,
Yeah.
I guess it's sort of like a swapped roles. He's like interviewing the other guy there. Uh,
Yeah.
just chilling. Chilling is the word to describe most everything in this movie. Um,
What they do well. Like, I mean,
oh
it's,
yeah,
and I'm not, I like Ty West, not enough to watch anything done by A24, but I do like him because one of my other favorite slashers is You're Next, which is another film that he did, and the guy that wore the bandana thing around his head, he's in You're Next. He's one of the siblings. So,
I don't
you
know.
know, I like the way he sets things up as far as like, um, but I don't know. There's just something about like the fact that it's pulled from real things that
Yep,
not only makes it unsettling, but makes me appreciate it more, because it's like these things still happen. Like there's still people that get pulled into these things, because you listen to these stories of these people in this film that talk about how they didn't have anything and they were alone. And like the first older lady that they meet, I forget her name, but she's like, oh, he came into our neighborhood. Yeah, because he knew the guys on the basketball court. Like he knew. It's like, because that's the thing with cult leaders, they
yeah.
know who to get at,
Who to
to get
prey,
them to
who,
come
who,
along.
who to prey on, right?
Yeah,
And
who to prey on, exactly.
he even says at one point, like, you were all outcasts,
Yeah.
and he was an outcast, and um, so yeah, I can there are a lot of parallels to this story and a lot of things happening in the world, right?
Yeah, which is really interesting considering it came out a decade ago.
Is it that old?
2013.
Wow. I don't know if I realized that.
I don't think I saw it in 2013. I think I probably saw it in like 2015 or 16, but it's still very relevant in today's climate.
Oh, yeah.
Which, like
it really holds up too. That probably explains why it's on Tubi. I was like, this is like a really,
it's old.
yeah, that's why. Yeah, I was surprised when I watched it. I was like, this is good. But heavy duty.
It is a heavy watch. It is definitely a heavy watch.
And you're going to get your scares in a very different or atypical way for found footage and horror movies. So
yeah, I definitely agree. But it's really good. It's on other things too. I know you watched it on Tubi. I watched it on Peacock, but I think when you look it up, it shows up as like free on a bunch of other things too. So,
worth a watch, but make sure you're in the mood for that.
Maybe have some time afterwards to watch like Futurama or, something kind of fun afterwards before you go to bed.
Yeah, or even just your standard horror film after this.
Yeah, like I think like it's really important, this is kind of like a small tangent, but I'll keep it short. I feel like, we as in like the horror community have gotten a little bit better about this, but there tends to be people that tell you that you can't be a horror fan if you can't handle certain things. If you start to watch a horror film and it becomes too much, just turn it off. Like, don't force yourself outside of this comfort, because horror is still, you can still like horror if you only watch slashers, if you don't like paranormal, if because like I had to think about Know It, because I knew I needed to revisit this before we talked about it, because it's been years since I've seen it. But like I do virtual like date nights with my partner. And so like, but I knew their limitations with horror. So this was not going to be a film that we would watch on like a virtual date night, because it's not something that would have left them feeling very, very thrilled that I made them watch it. And so I watched it in the middle of the day today while I was doing some paperwork at work, because that was the environment I needed to be in when I watched it, because it is a heavy watch. So just, small disclaimer.
Absolutely.
So
fair warning. Yeah.
Yes, fair warning. So anyway.
Okay.
We don't know what we're doing next. Maybe some awesome shark ones that people are recommending.
Get ready for the summer.
Yeah. If you got any summer theme, vacation, sharks, anything like that.
Yeah. Send them our way, the comments.
We'll be getting ready to do new ones. And we've got our 50th episode coming up. We're finalizing plans for that.
We're only like a few 4 away, something like that. So
yeah, we'll have to get to planning on that one.
Scary.
So anyway, yeah. Well, I think that's all we have for this episode of Found Footage Fridays. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Have a great rest of your weekend, a good week coming up. And Tom and I will see you next week.
See you next week.